Lauren, thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited. This will be great to meet everyone virtually.
I know, right? Okay, I wanted to start off with something fun. And I think you have yours so you can read. So we are going to start off with two truths and a lie. And so in the chat, you're going to answer which one you think is not the truth. So which one's the lie? So she's going to tell us three interesting facts, and one of them is not true. So Lauren, take it away and just say 1, 2, 3.
Okay. First of all, I'm so glad you gave me a little heads up about this because I'm never good at this on the spot. So my first one is I used to play lacrosse and soccer growing up. Number 2, I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, but I do not love the mountains. And number 3 is my dad used to work at the Pentagon.
Okay, so in the chat, let me know which one you think is not true. 1, 2, or 3. This one was hard for me. Which one do I think? Okay, so we have some people saying they don't think number 2 is true. We have people, yeah, everybody keeps saying number 2 so far. I don't know. See, some of these people are people, so I'm like, oh my gosh, do they know her better? Number 1 is lies. See, I thought it was number 2. Norma says she thinks number 1 is a lie, and I thought it was number 1 too.
Did you guys? I'm so excited to tell you. I'm a bad liar. I'm glad I can have some controversy here.
There we go. Okay, so what is it, Lauren?
My lie is that I did grow up in Colorado Springs, yes, but I love the mountains. I love everything about the mountains and hiking. So it was the lie that I don't love them.
Okay, perfect. So let's just start up. So you were talking about Colorado Springs and growing up. So what was your life like growing up? And like before, like functional medicine, was functional medicine all part of your life? Or just tell us about your life growing up.
Yeah, so my dad was in the Air Force. So he was served for about 20 years, which meant that I was born in California. We moved to Colorado, moved to Washington, D.C., where he worked at the Pentagon for a while, and then ultimately moved back to Colorado when I was in middle school through high school. So I grew up there. I have a little sister. She's a year and a half younger than me. So we're best friends. My whole family grew up really close, and it was always something in our lifestyles to be active and, practice eating healthfully as we could. I think those habits were instilled for me at a young age. And I really didn't know much about functional medicine growing up. So my kind of path is that I chose to be a nurse my freshman year of high school through a family experience, just learning and seeing firsthand how much they impacted our family and me. Just they're really caring and so thoughtful in their care. Never really looked back. Started volunteering in high school at hospitals. If you know me, I'm a pretty closet nerd for everything science too. So it worked really well with blending a heart for people and just a brain that desired to know more about the human body and science. Was perfect. So I graduated from the University of Wyoming with my bachelor's in nursing in 2018. And my now husband, he proposed right after that graduation. So
Aww.
I know, cute Ryan, but he works for ExxonMobil. So we moved down to Texas, and my nursing career really took off in the cardiac realm. So I worked with adults primarily in the hospital, acute care, intensive step down units, and then also just with vascular surgeries. So I saw a lot of chronic disease with that experience, and it really gets discouraging after a while to see people given all of these medications that are just like they're just standard protocols to do after a heart attack or after certain diagnoses, and it really just dawned on me how much nutrition and exercise and these lifestyle habits were not addressed at all. It was more just addressing the surface level presentation of these things.
Right.
So, long story short, I always knew I wanted to be a provider too. So I had my experience as a bedside nurse, and I went back to school at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston. Graduated with my master's in nurse practitioning this past May. And really during that experience, just being a provider in my clinical settings, I started to really question everything as far as conventional treatments go, just wanting to do more for my patients and not keep them on medications forever, or, just dig a little deeper into what was motivating them and how we could maybe switch some of the thought processes that they had so that they could get off the medicines eventually. And within that, I found pediatrics too, and just fell in love, had the biggest heart for all the kiddos. And I think it's true, the statement, when you know something's right, you just have a gut feeling. And I rely on my faith a lot too. So I just had this really good feeling that I was going to end up in pediatrics at some point, God willing. But I cold called functional medicine clinics around the Woodlands area, just Googled functional medicine, and I found hope for healing and spoke with Grace, our business director here. And, it was just like perfect from the beginning. I think it was one of the most easy interviews I've ever had, because I spoke with Dr. K for 2 hours just about functional medicine. And I think that's the moment it really clicked for me, where I was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is the why to everything that I've been taught. But it was like, I'm learning at a surface level, and everything here is beneath the surface. It was everything that I had been missing and just really racking my brain to find. So I was so fortunate to land here. And I think that's a little bit about my journey on how I got into functional medicine.
No, I think that's amazing. So I know you went on in a lot of different beautiful ways that I'd love to talk about, but specifically, I know you said that what first led you to nursing was just like the loss of a loved one, and like to see that kind of care. But specifically also, so I'm going to combine two things. One, you said there was the loss of the loved one, but then you also said like when you were in a traditional field, it just didn't feel right. Are both of those things, like to be able to see good care that you saw, and then when you're finally working in it, was that polarizing, or how did you feel during that?
That's a really good question. I think that seeing my grandfather go through heart failure, and just, he was so young. He was in his upper 60s. I think he was 67 when he passed. I was a freshman in high school, and it was a shock because, he was supposed to leave the hospital the next day. And while the care we received and the practitioners were so excellent and doing everything correctly by the book, but it just makes you wonder what's lacking in those protocols sometimes. Like, what can I do that's even beyond just prescribing something for a symptom? And I think that's where functional medicine really dives deep and looks at the foundation of humans. Like, we're designed to eat well, to move daily, to eat clean food, to have relationship, to lower our stress. So it's just all these things that can cascade into chronic disease. And I think that's what I started to find as I studied more into medicine, is like, okay, yes, this drug can help, but what is it masking, and how can we treat what's beneath the surface of the high blood pressure? Like, what's causing the high blood pressure, instead of just treating it for years. So that's where my heart is. And with kids, it's beautiful because they have a little less life than some of the adults I had worked with. And there's just
Right.
such resilience and pure love with pediatrics. And I love working with parents too, because that's one of the purest forms of love too, is your babies. So I think it's an honor to be in that realm of medicine now.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that and just being so authentic and vulnerable. I think that can be kind of that hard space when you're like, it's not that people aren't trying their best in the traditional medicine world. And we would, and maybe in areas they aren't, but that happens, you know, but sometimes it's like amazing care, but it's just not always the whole picture. So that kind of leads me to the next question, which is what does functional medicine mean to you?
To me, functional medicine is a very personalized approach to your health. So similar foundation for every person, but it's going to look at the specific person as a whole. So I know here at Hope for Healing, we can do genetic panels. So I love that because it gives a blueprint as to what your body systems are working at and how to optimize that so that across the field you can just thrive in life. So I think that
Absolutely.
to me, it's just working on those root causes and just really watering the roots so that everything else just blossoms from that.
No, that's amazing. Especially, and I love that you mentioned the genetic panel, especially because you're dealing with um, pediatrics. Like you get to help support them. So as where, um, you know, they've lived, like you were saying, they've lived less time. So therefore their bodies are fresher and ready to be prepared. But genetics really gives them that place to be able to grow from. And you get to walk with them in that. I have had the pleasure of watching Lauren in one of her appointments and just to see the care that she has for her patients and just the way she loves them and delights them. And to the point where when we were prepping for this interview, like part of what we were talking about was just this cute baby that came in. We were like, so adorable. It's not just something like, okay, you're in the appointment, now you're out and everything. It's that we are going to spend time with you. We remember you when you leave the office. We think of you. Something you were actually talking about before we started recording formally is that y'all, the providers actually have meetings. Is that right?
Yeah,
Can you tell
yeah.
us about that?
We can every single day, at least once a day, sometimes more. It'll be Dr. K, Dr. B, Tony, Jenny, Rita when she's here, Catherine, our genetic panel expert. I mean, we have at least 5 to 6 brains in an office discussing patients for that day, for the next day, questions, just really, we call it our brain hive. And I just feel so blessed to learn from some of the brightest other providers too, because sometimes I'll joke with patients and I'm like, you're getting me in the flesh, but you're also hearing from 5 different brains right now. Like everything I'm telling you has been synthesized from me, from Dr. K. Like it's truly revolutionary the way that Hope for Healing works because we're really giving you such thoughtful advice and yeah, we just really do care, like you said, Lauren. I think across the board, providers, patient care coordinators, administration, like there's just a whole lot of love in this clinic.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll often see like if a mom has to run to the bathroom and like people like who gets to hold the baby and we just love the ability to be able to like have those moments with your children. So it's always great and they're always so adorable. I'm
Oh, I
like
know.
the next baby is always the cutest baby. I'm like they're
Yes.
amazing.
I just had a parent yesterday ask me, they're like, do you tell every baby they're they're cute? And I'm like, yeah, because they are. I'm just a firm believer, just like dogs, like everyone is just so cute in their own way.
Absolutely, they're so precious. Somebody was just mentioning that you were able to be their child's like practitioner, and that they were just giggling through the whole appointment. So they enjoyed it.
How
Oh, just so y'all also know that y'all are welcome to put more questions in the chat. We're going to have a side of questions that y'all have submitted, but if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. Okay, so this is just a very honest question, which can be really like interesting and different. We understand at Hope for Healing that functional medicine can seem really weird to some people and very different to people. But so before knowing the full gist of things, were there any doubts or any like, that's interesting that you had about functional medicine? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, I think I just didn't grow up with it and I didn't know what to call it. So being able to give it a name, to be able to, practice and just know that it already existed, I was like, oh, this is fabulous. But I think, some of my doubts was just not knowing how deep it dived and just not knowing like, oh, is this something that I can't prescribe medicine in, or do I only do homeopathic remedies? Like, am I going to have to go to a different school to learn this?
Right.
And I think I was so excited to find out that all of my conventional training with nursing and with my NP degree, it was all applicable. I learned a lot of the basics in a sense, but then functional medicine is just like the whole iceberg effect, where it's like, surprise, you heard this one time in school, but this is a really big deal. So I've loved it because I love to learn and I love to understand why, to the point where it frustrates me sometimes. But I think that it's really valuable to know the why. And if I can completely understand it and explain it to parents, I think that's when we see the most light bulbs work, because it's different for sure, but I think it's also scientifically based and it's on a very small level, to the point we're talking about small cytokines and molecules and genes, and they play such a big role in health. And a lot of times that's just not addressed in conventional medicine for whatever reason. But I think that I was hesitant because I didn't know how scientifically sound functional medicine really was before I came into this world.
Absolutely. Well, and you said you growing up, this has not been like a new, like, oh, I want to be a nurse practitioner because I want to make money, or I think this is cool, or no, like you enjoyed digging into the science. So to take traditional medicine, and whether you enjoyed your time or not, it was like it wasn't hitting the full mark. But when you stepped into functional medicine, you're like, I need it to hit the science mark too.
Yes. And I think that I wouldn't trade my experience for the world. I loved working with adults too. And this was just a really cool journey that I've taken, that I've been blessed with. But I also think I wouldn't fully appreciate functional medicine now if I hadn't experienced everything with conventional medicine in my past.
That is so good. I think that kind of shows, especially because not all of what I love about the pediatric you work with is that they will say, oh my gosh, functional medicine was my life. But I don't know that we have many patients, our parents of our patients, that feel that way. Like, this is a new world that we all had to learn together. And so I feel like as the community that we're developing on Mighty Networks is that space to go, hey, we're learning, and our pediatric providers, as well as all of our providers, will be putting into that. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I want to talk to Lauren as a patient. So as coming from a patient perspective, just as much as functional medicine is science-based, it is to the root of what you're dealing with. There's not a thing that we put out there that we're just like, oh, okay, let's just throw a dart and see what happens. But at the same time, some of these functional medicine things that we do can be really hard to stick with. So what helps us, or what helps you from like a patient perspective, if you had to do things? And I know you've already done certain things within the practice not as a provider, but as from the patient side of things. What helps you stick with it when functional medicine and learning new things can get really hard and applying these things can be hard.
Yeah. Oof. That's good. I think that it's so much to learn, and it's every day, and there's always something new. And I am a perfectionist by default nature. And as much as I try to turn my brain off, sometimes I get caught up in those details, and I take a lot of my patients home with me. And I just am always thinking of everything. So I think even from a patient perspective, applying some of the things I'm learning to my own life and to my family's life, it's okay, how am I going to make this sustainable? How am I going to make this not overwhelming? Because overwhelm can be inflammatory too. Stress emotionally is just as inflammatory as, eating something that is going to cause your gut to be inflamed. It's the same sort of pathway. And I think what helps me is just to go back to simplicity. And I always try to express to parents, especially, that consistency is better than perfection. And if you have a week or a day where you missed a supplement or you weren't able to do X, Y, or Z, that's okay. And tomorrow's a new day. The next minute's the next minute. And the big picture is that being consistent with these efforts is going to make a bigger change in the long run versus, abandoning it because it got hard. And it's not bad if it gets hard. I think it's important to really dial down and talk to me or talk to whoever your practitioner is and just be authentic. And if it's too much, let us know. Or if something's overwhelming, let us know, because we'll help you to kind of brainstorm and pick apart whatever it is that's causing that overwhelm. And more so than the practitioners too, we have amazing health coaches with Hope for Healing now too, where some of these symptoms can be overwhelming, and it's a journey. It's not an immediate black and white fix in a lot of cases. It's a process over months. So having that health coach in your corner to make whatever we suggest in appointments more realistic in your everyday life, that's a really valuable thing that we offer too. Absolutely. So I think to sum it all up, it's like when it starts to get to be too much, I like to bring it back to the simplicity. And if you need someone to help you with that, these health coaches are really, really excellent at what they do.
Absolutely. I think a huge part, and this is just a part of our values and our mission, is communication is huge. Our provider, again, when putting together the new system, so depending on you listening, how long you've been with us, we have really redone a lot of what Hope for Healing does. We're going from the traditional, like you come in, you have your appointment with your provider and you move on, we give you supplements or medications, and then and again, even in functional medicine, we spent a lot of time. There was a lot of really big investment, but we still were like, man, we just want our patients to be thriving so much more, which is when we're like, okay, health coaching, let's put this in as a part of, especially after our diagnosis. I mean, some of our children are so young, getting really hard diagnoses and our diagnoses. And they're getting these diagnoses, and that can be really overwhelming. Like my child, especially when you're dealing with like pandas or anything, like my child was just this full of life and now we're coming this other way. Or even my healthy child, like all of a sudden, like, why can't I get my eczema under order or whatever that is? I think we have those people that are overwhelmed. But Lauren, I think you said it perfectly when it comes to doing what you can. And we get to help you meet you where you are, not where we think you should be, not where you think you should be, but where you actually are, and how we can actually help you through that. So no, I think that was really great. And I think since you were already on this role of giving great encouragement, what would you say to a person, my hope is that this question isn't for our current patients. We hope that you feel very seen and heard. But one of the things that I hear time and time again when I speak with people who are either new to the practice or thinking about the practice is that so many parents don't feel like their voice matters, or so many patients don't feel like their voice matters. So, what would you say to those people who are like, I know this is my child, but I feel like my doctor or my provider is making all the decisions? Like, what would you say to that?
I think that a really cool aspect of Hope for Healing and the way that I've been trained here, but also the way that I knew I wanted to practice medicine was that it's truly a partnership. We want parents to have as much autonomy in their patient's care and their child's care as they can. And also, there's more than one way to do things oftentimes. So it's really valuable to hear feedback of they can't swallow pills, so maybe we'll do a topical, just little things like that to big changes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if it's someone who's already established here, definitely voice your concern during an appointment because
Absolutely.
all of us as providers want to strive to be as authentic as we can. And we're always trying to meet you where you're at. So if it's becoming too much, it's no problem to be like, whoa, slow back, roll back. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And we love to hear that because it gives us a good assessment of what's going on.
Absolutely.
But for new patients or if anyone's considering coming to Hope for Healing, I think that your voice is definitely the sixth vital sign that we use here. Like, I love to hear what a parent's perspective is. I value it enormously, and I know every other provider does too. And that's really a main difference with functional medicine too, is that you have more of a voice in your care than sometimes you're not being told what to do. It's more of we're going to help guide you and give you tools to help and different things to work with your health. So take heart and know that everyone at the Hope for Healing staff would definitely value your voice.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really good. I think something that I thought was also really unique about our practice is we value your child's voice too.
Yeah.
They are able to communicate things, and so this is like to see. And again, I've shadowed lots of appointments with Lauren and our other providers to be able to see them stop and go like, "And how have you been feeling?" Because they know, and teaching them, I think that's also, it's like you're raising a generation that will be able to communicate with their doctors and have an expectation, and their providers to be able to, an expectation that they'll listen, and that is something that they should. I think growing up, like, I didn't know, the doctor just told me, but to be able to find my voice. So I think that's really exciting. Working with pediatrics. So you've said a lot of reasons why. Are there any other reasons why you've enjoyed or chosen pediatrics?
I think that the main thing I've just enjoyed is seeing these kiddos grow so well and establishing a relationship with each and every family is just really special to me. I love to see you come back. I love that I get to see babies grow from 3 days old to 1 year old. I mean, the change is profound, and just seeing these families develop is really, really special. So I think I just really cherish the relationship part of pediatrics the most.
I love that. Okay, so specifically, and I think you've already listed several reasons. So even if you just highlight back on those, or what were the top reasons you specifically chose Hope for Healing?
I chose Hope for Healing over all of the other functional medicine clinics that I interviewed at because of the team. Definitely. I loved that I was able to be mentored by some of the most genius providers I'd ever met. I really love that Dr. K takes an interest in each of her providers so lovingly and so meticulously. She really cares about each of us, and that's for every other provider too. I've established such great relationships where I know that I'm never alone in a situation necessarily, and that there's always a voice to speak into whatever case that we're working on. So that mentorship and just teamwork is really important to me. And then also just being able to work with such revolutionary diagnostic tools with running genetics on children is just so beautiful to invest in, because I get to see you see a blueprint of how they work, and that's never going to change. And you always have it as they grow through different stages of life. So I think that, again, the little science nerd in me that just loves all of that detail and that blueprint, and then also just the relationship to develop with all of the amazing staff here. It's just been a lot of pinch me moments in the last few months since joining.
That's amazing. I love that you mentioned a lot of the education and pieces. And so that is something that, I mean, I've known that the practice has been a part of. I mean, we're constantly either downloading a webinar, going to a conference, trying to learn in some way, shape, or form. But that's really also why we started to have these events. We felt like our love of learning, we wanted to pass that on to our patients. Why we have these events, get to know these people. What do you want to know? And that's important for us. It also gives us that, though we love the time we get in the appointments, it also gives us extra time to be able to educate you on things. You know, it also helps us know, like, oh man, we thought we explained that really well. Now we have another opportunity to go at it again. And I also think for me, repetition is the key of learning, right? You're going to hear things over and over and over again, but we have to hear them over again to learn them and to apply them. So I really love that we all, honestly, in the team, just love that you are here and love that you are a part of this team. We are all so grateful. And we have already had so many people who just have loved being a part and being a patient of yours. And it has been so great. So I will ask the other side of things. If you had to pick a least favorite part of your job, what is hard?
Oh, you know, well, we're in the season of sickness, so it's never fun to see these sick kiddos, and it's hard on the whole family when that happens. But I guess on the flip side of that, the fact that Hope for Healing is able to offer these sick visits same day. We have an amazing triage team, especially our nurse, Michelle, who just really hones in and talks to these families, and we can help you decide if it's appropriate to stay home or to come in. It just offers you a more functional minded appointment in the face of sickness that you wouldn't get in an urgent care sometimes. So that's been, great, but also it's just like the human in you never likes to see sick kiddos. Of course. But the other side, I think, is just taking these babies home with me can be really challenging sometimes in the best way, because I care so much about all of my patients, and I just lose sleep over some things sometimes because I care so much. And then I'll wake up in the morning and there's a message that whatever symptom resolved, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're back to normal. And it's just funny. My poor husband hears a lot of stories at night, and I think he probably sees a lot of I don't know. He hears a lot of
heart. There's just the compassionate. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also just part of the medicine world, and I think that it's just great to know that as a parent, if you have questions or anything, there's a portal that you write in, and like you can always call us. Like, it's just a very hands-on type of practice where I love just reaching out to patients and sending messages just to follow up if I am having them on my heart for some reason.
No, I love that. I think your least favorite thing being just your heart for people to be sad, like, because we do it, we hear it in the practice. Like when we hear, I know, okay, so this is a FYI for you parents who may feel like sad or embarrassed that your child is crying. Our hearts don't go, oh wow, that kid's annoying. Our hearts all go simultaneously, go like, oh, that poor thing, like what do they need? How can we help? So anyway, just feel rest assured, we all instantly go, what do we need to do? How can we support
I
you?
know. And I'm always like, Mom, how are you sleeping? Like, how are we doing? Because I am a family nurse practitioner too. So eventually might see adults, but I'm always like, make sure you're taking care of yourself too. Like, you have to be your best self to be parent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's great. So again, if y'all have any questions, if not, we'll be wrapping up shortly. Um, but again, thank you so much, Lauren, for this time and just to get to know you more. And so hopefully our patients will get to know you more and maybe others that have been like on the fence because we understand picking a provider for your child or yourself is a lot of work and there's so much information out there. And so I know for me, one thing that was really important to me when my job at the practice started changing is like, I just want people to be able to come into our practice at peace, to know that they're cared for and loved, to know that their voice really matters. We're not just saying it. Like, we're not just saying, oh, tell us, and then we're going to steamroll you. Like, we really mean it. Like, hey, like, I can't do this, or hey, what about this, or could we wait to this? And they will help you walk through that and let you know when things are actually urgent. Not everything is urgent all the time, but things that are like, no, this is actually really important, but this can wait. And so, but thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I think I just agree with everything you just said, and I appreciate everyone for taking the time out of their day to come and meet me, and to you for hosting this too, Lauren.
Thank you. Well, you all have a blessed day, and we will talk to y'all later next week. We are doing an event. It will be Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. We are doing a gluten-free, dairy-free, low sugar. We are going to teach you how to cook delicious food for Thanksgiving. And I may or may not have tried all of the things we're cooking, and it is so good. Like a hint, one of them are like cherry pie pockets that are, they're so good, like so good. So anyway, you're not going to miss the event. If you aren't a member, the event is $20, or I feel like you should know, like all these events that are paid are completely covered for our members. So feel welcome, feel seen, and feel heard. You have a great day, everyone.